For me, there's nothing more relaxing than tending to Mrs. Milligan's roses, Mr. Douglas's tulips, or even the Bente's family's sunflower field, but that hasn't always been the case. About 5 years ago, things were very different. I used to live with my mother, who at the time was very weak due to a stroke. I helped her how I could, but I used to be quite nervous and angry, shall we say. My father abandoned us when I was 5. Maybe he got tired of the life he was leading, but anyways, that's when things started to change for me. I had to take on the role of an adult very early on and help my mother put food on our table. So, I started working when I was still underage, and, in fact, I realized I liked having my independence and my own money. I grew up and the anger towards my father has consumed me even more each day. Because of this problem, I started to get involved with drugs and robbery too. I became violent and kind of lost my way, watched my mom have 2 heart failures and get sick, which made me blame my dad for everything we went through. He was responsible for me being in that situation and my mother's illness. So the hatred only grew inside me, along with the desire to end my father's life. I lost my job and the debts increased, along with the lack of food. Sometimes I saw my mother suffer and mean to take her own life, but she always told me the biggest reason for her not being able to do that was me. We managed to survive with the few resources we had. I was arrested a few times, however, as long as I was still underage, they always released me. One day, while I was walking through the streets of the city, I ended up seeing my father at a restaurant with his new wife and daughters, and hatred took over me. My father had an affair with his co-worker with whom he had 2 daughters after he left us. As soon as I saw them, I planned his ending and wanted him to suffer as he had made us suffer. I went after some colleagues to get a gun, and it didn't take long to have one in my hands. I tried to find out where he was, where he worked, what time he left his house, and what time he arrived after work. After a few days, I went to his workplace and waited for him to leave. I walked next to his car and, as soon as he got in, I unloaded all my anger and resentment into him. Of course, I did it all in the heat of that angry moment, and I regret making that mistake. After that, I ended up being arrested and confessed to the crime. My mother almost couldn't stand what happened, and for that she was admitted to the hospital for a few days. Due to this choice of mine, I spent 10 years locked up in a cell, but thanks to my good behavior, I was released from prison, found out my mother got weaker and was suffering with a stroke, so I decided to change my life. I went to look for a job and, as expected, I was welcomed by a society that feared me because I was a former prisoner. One day, as I was walking back home, an old man wearing an overcoat, long tangled beard, messy hair and a red cap stopped me and said he had something to offer me. Obviously I believed he was just a crazy old man, so I didn't mind it much, but he insisted and said he didn't want money, just my attention, because his intention was to help me by offering me a job. At that point, I was accepting everything, so I took the matter seriously. The man surprised me by saying, "I know what you did, Mike, and I know you had to do it. Don't blame yourself for this, it's been a long time, now you need to move on with your life. I'm looking for a gardener and I want it to be you. Don't worry about anything, everything you need is going to be in your mother's garage in the morning." After listening to all the man had to say, I began to question how he knew what had happened and asked him what he would get in return for helping me. His response was that he wouldn't get anything and that I just needed to follow a few rules, then everything would be fine. "You look like a young man in a wheelchair I helped once, full of doubts and uncertainties," he said as he scratched his beard. I couldn't quite believe it all, but the old man looked right into my eyes and said, "Have faith." And at that moment, even though I didn't believe it, I decided to accept what he was saying. The man, then, put his hand on my shoulders and simply scratched his nose, which, for a few seconds, I swore I saw red sparks coming out of. Then he said, "Before you go, listen very carefully to the rules you need to follow, obey them, and everything will work out for you and your mother. Disobey them and you will have an unwanted end. The rules are as it follows. Rule number 1. Don't worry about who will look for you to take care of their garden or vegetable garden, just go do it, no matter what time of day it is, go without asking any questions. You will have a golden client list and earn well, just be sure to serve them. Rule number 2. The land of your customers, sometimes it's going to need to be watered not only with water, but with blood as well. Calm down, I know this scared you, but don't you think you'll have to kill someone to get it? You will only need to find a black cat. I said you didn't have to kill anyone, I didn't say anything about animals, once or twice a month will be enough. Don't worry, you'll be notified when it's necessary. Rule number 3. Sometimes your work is not going to be limited to planting, caring for roses or watering the garden. Jobs will come up that you'll need to dig deeper, 6 feet below the surface to be exact, and as I said in the beginning, you can never say no to anyone who asks you to. Rule number 4. The Miller family people will always offer you something to drink when you are tending their garden. Never accept it. I know you will question who the Miller family really is, and I ask you once again to relax as you will soon meet them. Rule number 5. Don't let any of the plants or roses wither or even die. Your care is paramount for each of them. If it happens, the owners will not be very happy. I've already warned you that I'm not responsible for what they might do to you when they lose their minds. Rule number 6. Be very careful with the insecticides you use to control pests. Properly use all the safety equipment that I myself will provide you with, but never make the mistake of thinking that the use of gloves or masks is dispensable, as the result of direct contact with these insecticides can cause you much more harm, in addition to poisoning or even an unbearable allergy. If you have the wrong contact with some material, you may, in the future, change your eating habits to only one type of meat, human. Rule number 7. There's a farm near here where you'll need to take care of a tree, an apple tree to be exact. This plant is quite special, and whenever you arrive at the place, look for a young man named Arthur. He is going to hand you a list of rules that are uniquely suited to that type of fruit tree that you will need to follow. Be careful and obey everything Arthur asks you to do. Rule number 8. And finally, some of Mr. Thomas's plants in particular will have to be fertilized with fertilizers that only he himself will supply you personally. Never ask Mr. Thomas what this fertilizer is or what it is made of, just do your job, even if you find teeth or hair inside the bags. After listening to the rules, I thought, this is all so crazy, but for some reason, that crazy old man passed me a certain amount of trust. I asked him why he wanted me to do this work as a gardener and how he knew what I had done in the past, but the man just asked me to remain calm and to accept his proposal so that my mother and I would live a better life. As I had nothing to lose, I ended up accepting the proposal. The old man then raised his hand and snapped his fingers, which caused a sudden flash to be emitted, but everything was back to normal in a matter of seconds. I looked around, but I didn't find this man anywhere again. And here I am, working with plants ever since. I'm used to all the oddities of this job and, to tell you the truth, I like it. But something else is puzzling me. 2 days ago, a man named Henry came to me saying that I need to take the rules given to me more seriously, and that frail-looking gentleman is not quite who I thought he was.